Hello everyone, I'm Tim Selby, and I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas. And I have a question for you. What if you knew that this was your last Christmas? This was the last one you were going to have. I mean, that's true for some of us, right? Some of us know it, some of us don't. But as I thought about that question this week, I bet my response was a lot like yours. Because if this was your last Christmas, don't you think that you would look at people a little bit more deeply? Wouldn't you hold that hug a heartbeat longer? Wouldn't you be quick with a kind word and easy with grace? Wouldn't you just want to take in the wonder and the beauty of it all? Wouldn't the lights maybe look a little brighter? Maybe you'd sing a little louder. The magic and the mystery, wouldn't you want it just to wash over you and soak it all in? Yeah, I would. And for most of us, this is not our last Christmas. But for all of us, this is the only one we've got. So why would we treat it with any less importance? Why would we treat it any less than if it was our last? So I invite you in this Christmas season to open your hearts to the wonder, the beauty, the mystery, the goodness of it all. May you embrace this Christmas season. Now, did you know that there's a crime wave sweeping across the land? This crime wave comes to big cities, and it comes to small towns. It comes to the rich and to the poor. It comes to the old and the young. From this crime, there is nobody who escapes. Now, I'm not talking about the stealing of Christmas presents under the tree. No, this is much more serious than that. I'm talking about what is known as stolen baby Jesus syndrome. Yep, stolen baby Jesus syndrome. Baby Jesuses are being stolen out of nativity scenes from coast to coast, all across the land. Occasionally, a Joseph will go missing, or Mary or a shepherd, but baby Jesus is the target of this crime. Now, we might trace this crime wave back to the show Dragnet. Do you remember Dragnet? A show, a mystery, a crime-solving show with detectives Joe Friday and Bill Gannon. Do you remember Joe Friday and Bill Gannon? Now, I'm not going to say if you remember Friday and Gannon and Dragnet that you're old, because I'm not the kind of person that would say that kind of thing. But I tell you what, I got my hand up. I remember Joe Friday. Oh, yeah. Well, there was a show way back when things were in black and white. And in this particular episode, there was a church, and a baby Jesus was stolen from the nativity scene right in front of the church. And they called the police, and it ended up, with Friday and Gannon. And they were on the hunt. They couldn't solve the crime, though. And it came to be Christmas Eve night, late in the evening, and they were standing right in the front of the church like I am here with the priest. And they said, "Father, I'm sorry, you're going to have Mass in the morning without the baby Jesus in the nativity scene." And just as they were having this conversation, the doors creaked open in the back of the church. And they strained to see in the dark who was coming in those doors. And they heard the wheels of a wagon rolling across the floor. And a little boy was there. And he was pulling a little red wagon, and he pulled it all the way up that center aisle, stopping right in front of the altar. And you know what was in that red wagon, don't you? Yeah, the baby Jesus was in that red wagon. And the father said, "Son, what are you doing with the baby Jesus?" And he said, "Father, I prayed so hard for a red wagon for Christmas. And I promised Jesus that if I got one, he would be the first one I took for a ride. So I took Jesus for a ride." and he brought him back. And Jesus was back there in the sanctuary for that Christmas morning Mass. Perhaps that is where this crime wave started. But we see it in so many ways. I just read some this week about it. There was a Catholic church, St. Lucy's Catholic Church in Florida. They had a baby Jesus stolen off their lawn. It was they said it was a baby doll that was about the size of a 9-month-old and weighed 20 pounds. And I wondered, what's a 9-month-old doing in the nativity scene? But a car at 4:30 in the afternoon pulled up, a woman got out, ran up, took the Jesus, got back in. It was like a kidnapping. About a week later, that baby Jesus showed up on the lawn of another church in Florida, about 20 miles away, with a note on it that said, please return to the church where it was stolen from. And then the note said, God bless, right? Of course, God bless. There was a baby Jesus stolen from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, all right? It was stolen from a church in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, dropped off at an emergency room at the hospital with a note attached to it that said that the baby Jesus had been neglected by its parents, Mary and Joseph Christ. Okay, that's an odd one, right? I read about one in Hoboken, New Jersey. A baby Jesus went missing from a nativity scene in the 1930s. And the story about this particular Jesus is that it was in the attic of a house. People had died. Other people came into possession of it. And it went on down the line until a woman was in possession of it. Her parents had died. She now had the baby Jesus. And she thought, I got to take it back. And she returned this baby Jesus some 90 years later to the church where he had come from. In Kittening, First United Methodist Church in Kittening, Pennsylvania, a baby Jesus was stolen and replaced with a pumpkin. How about that? I don't know what that's all about. In Eureka Springs, Arkansas, a baby Jesus was stolen, and it was chained to a cinder block to keep people from stealing it. You know what they stole? They stole the Jesus, the chain, and the cinder block. And right down the street at Holy Name Catholic Church, just down Oak Street here, their baby Jesus had been stolen a couple different times along the way. And most recently, the time it was stolen, there was an article in the newspaper about it. What they came to find was there were some people that were walking down Pine Street, or walking down Oak Street to go to a party on Pine Street, and on the way, they figured they'd just take Jesus to the party with them. And so they took Jesus to the party. My friend Father Ernest down there said it's really interesting. Everybody seems to be looking for Jesus. And I got to say, when I hear all these stories, it makes me wonder, what would I do if I had the baby Jesus for a day or two? Now, I'm not saying I'm going to, but what just so happens that I had a baby Jesus. What would I do with it? And I thought about that, and I thought, you know what I would do? I'd have to have some people over, right? Kind of like that party on Pine Street. It'd be great to have the baby Jesus, so you wouldn't want to keep that to yourself. So you want to maybe have some friends over. So I'd have some people over to celebrate that with. People who know me know I like to watch the sunset. So I would take Jesus to watch the sunset with me. And then the third thing I would do, is I thought I'd have to do some kind of act of kindness or service or something to show Jesus that I was maybe doing something meaningful with my life once in a while. I wonder what you would do with the baby Jesus if you had Jesus just for a little bit. Well, I don't know what you do, but I feel this. I think Jesus, baby Jesus, was just as at home at that party on Pine Street as he was at the church on Oak Street. We got 3 churches right here on Oak Street. It's kind of Church Street here in Steamboat Springs. But I think Jesus was just as home at that party. Because at that party, there were beautiful people sharing laughter and smiles, just like we do in churches on Oak Street. At that party, there were people with hardships and difficulties, just like us. At that party, there were people hoping for a beautiful future and something good in front of them, just like we do. You know what? If you read the Gospels, I think what you find is Jesus was actually more comfortable with people who were not the religious people than those who were. Or maybe I would better say that this way. Jesus was not as comfortable with the religious leaders, right? People like me, because he found them kind of annoying with all their rules and their regulations and their judgments and their seeming ability to miss the point of it all, which is really to find a way to love and value one another. Now, this stealing of the baby Jesus led to a lot of security measures around this, right? So you have many places will chain the baby Jesus to the ground. Some will chain it to a cinder block. You saw how well that worked in Arkansas. I was in Denver not long ago, and the baby Jesus there was behind it looked like bulletproof plastic, kind of encased in there. There's security cameras that are focused on the baby Jesus, and there's actually even GPS devices that get implanted into the Jesus so you can find him wherever he goes. I got to tell you, I can think of no worse way to spend my energy at Christmas time than worrying about trying to find a porcelain doll that got stolen from the church lawn. If somebody steals the baby Jesus, let him go. We don't need a plastic imitation. You know why? Because we've got the real thing, don't we? We have the real thing. In the great song, "O Holy Night," there's a phrase that says, "And he appeared, and the soul felt its worth." Then he appeared, and the soul felt its worth. So in some way at this Christmas season, if you feel your own worth, your own value, you feel that you're loved and lovable, that you're important, you know what that is? That's the real thing. That's the real thing. Our Christmas story is not just about a nativity scene, not just about a baby being born 2,000 years ago. We celebrate that, but we also then now celebrate how the Spirit that was in Jesus lives yet in us, lives in you and me, how that light and that love is here among us today, in our place, in our time. You don't have to steal it because it's given to you. And you can't hang on to it because it's not yours. You can simply receive it and let it go and give it away. The manger scene here, it's not the end of the story. Jesus didn't come to stay laying in a manger. It's not the end, just a beginning. This is a beginning. And when Jesus walked along the Sea of Galilee one day and told people, "Follow me," yeah, just a beginning. The day Jesus walked down a dirt road with an empty tomb behind him, just a beginning. That moment when you felt compelled to follow in those footsteps, a beginning. And here today at this Christmas season, when there's magic in the air and love swells among us, when the songs of the angels of goodwill on earth and peace to people ring in our ears, this Christmas can be yet another beginning of all that we might become. This Christmas can be a silent night, a holy night, when all is calm and all is bright. A beginning. Jesus, this child, grew up to walk alongside those who are hurting. And usually the way the form that takes in our world is when we walk alongside someone else, when another person walks alongside of us when we are hurting, embodying Jesus' presence with us. When somebody walks alongside you in your pain and your struggle, you know what that is? That's the real thing. Jesus came to encourage the discouraged. So if you're discouraged right now, and yet somewhere inside you, you find the strength to get up, to carry on, to keep going in the midst of that, you know what that strength is, that life is? That is the real thing. Jesus came to feed people. And maybe we learn how to feed each other. And maybe in our town, that's making sure the food bank shelves that lift up are full. Or maybe it's supporting an aid organization worldwide to help people who are hungry, or maybe it's having somebody to the table in your house for a meal. When we learn how to feed one another, to feed the hungry, that's the real thing. When we find courage in the midst of our fear, we're all afraid, we all have fears, but when there's courage in us that's stronger than that propels us forward, that keeps us doing amazing things, even despite our fears. You know what that courage is? It's the real thing. When we feel grace for those who might feel shame or failure, or feel like you haven't been or done who you really can be, but we know there's grace that washes over you. That grace is the real thing. We don't have to understand how all this works. I don't understand it all, but I believe so deeply in the words of the Gospel of John that the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness does not overcome it. So if anybody finds that the baby Jesus has disappeared from the manger scene, relax, don't worry. Of course he's gone. He's got stuff to do. Important stuff. And perhaps the best that we can do is to follow after him. Not so we can bring him back and chain him to the ground, but so that we can learn to do the things that he did, to do the stuff that he did, that important stuff. Stuff that brings hope to the hopeless. Stuff that brings light in the darkness. Stuff that brings love into the lives of all people. You can just call it Christmas stuff. It's the real thing. It's a gift that God offers to us. May we receive it, and may we give it away. Merry Christmas, everybody. Merry Christmas.